Okay, well, let's go ahead and start. It is 10 minutes after 6. Today is December 12th, 2018. This is the meeting of the Transportation and Traffic Safety Advisory Committee. If I could please have roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll call the roll. Armando Garza.
Here,
Here. Adrian Dominguez. Present. Carlos Garcia.
present.
Joe Barron. On his way.
On his way.
Joe Benavides.
Not here.
Dave Akers, present. Felix Canales.
Present.
Rafael Tabuil, absent. Selena Cosavilla, present. So we do have quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much. I guess you could send it out.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair, I'm sorry,
Yes.
just wanted to point out, Mr. Garza did call to inform us that he would not be able to attend.
Okay.
I'm unsure about the other attendees.
It's our understanding that Mr. Barron is on his way.
And only if you wanted to excuse the absence. Erica, is Mr. Garza had called in?
Yes.
Was anybody else saying that they were going to be absent?
No.
Okay, so Mr. Garza was one of the,
Okay, so let it be on the record that Mr. Garza is an excused absence for notifying the committee that he will not be here today. Okay. Thank you very much. Our second item is general citizens communications. Do we have any speakers present today? No? Nothing in? Okay. Then let's have the approval of our minutes. If we could review them. And this is for minutes for the meeting held on the 14th of November.
I was absent, so I probably should not make the motion.
Okay. Thank you for being approached. Anyone else who'd like to have any questions, any concerns, any corrections that need to be done? If not, if I could have someone do,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes of the meeting November 14th of 2018.
thank you, do we have a second for that?
I second it.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, our next item is our staff reports. Anything to report, staff?
No, sir.
All right, like that part. Okay, communications, our first item is Vision Zero. This is to adopt a family of traffic safety programs based on the principles of systematic safety with the goal of ending all traffic fatalities by an agreed upon year. This requires stakeholders summits, pivots in traffic thinking, and has been adopted as near as San Antonio. Do we have anyone here to do that presentation?
Yes, Mr. Chair, today we have with us Alec Martinez. He's our resident expert in all things bicycle pedestrian, and so
And coordination.
and coordination.
That's right.
As our bicycle pedestrian coordinator.
That's right.
Oh, and so this is a bicycle,
No,
this is
no,
an all
this-
vehicle type?
all vehicle, and I'll give some more information.
Okay, you have the floor.
Here.
Should I turn off the light?
Yeah, no, I'll get it.
Close that.
I want to sit front.
Okay. All right. So just as a quick sort of rundown as to what this is, I want to give you guys a little bit of a pop quiz and see where we stand on our ideas of these concepts. So, what do you think kills more people every year in the U.S.? Gun violence. We know that's been a pretty politically charged issue, or cars.
Cars.
Cars. Is that everyone? It is cars. Cars do kill.
More cars than guns.
Guns and cars.
Guns and cars and butter. So cars definitely. But do we know how many lives are lost through car crashes every year?
Nationwide?
Some guesses. Yeah, nationwide.
I I say the double D, the double C.
Oh, sorry, that is a double C. Well, you'd be right, so more than 40,000. Last year was a fever pitch of over 40,000. So, traffic accidents and traffic fatalities are decreasing in Laredo. True, false?
False.
False, that's right. LMT actually did a quick write-up about them actually increasing in the last few years, so definitely not. There is nothing that can be done about traffic accidents. They're simply the costs of doing business. Well, and that's where we end up here with Vision Zero. So like Director Eads mentioned, Vision Zero is a family of traffic safety programs that started in Sweden in 1997, was then adopted all over Europe, and then made its way into the US in the mid-2000s. Like was also mentioned, San Antonio adopted it in the last 5 years, and they've seen a decrease in traffic fatalities. And so I kind of want to explain what this is before we talk about its adoption, which we met with the city manager about last week. So again, programs that are based on systematic safety. So what is that? It's about 5 core principles. 1 is speed control and separation. 2 is functional harmony, forgiveness, and state awareness. Nobody got that, but I did skip over 3.
Yeah.
Ah, okay, you looked at me, okay. So, and predictability and simplicity. So we'll go into depth a little bit more, but all of these 5 things essentially come down to the fact that humans are going to make mistakes, and a road system that is designed over humans not making mistakes is not one that's very well designed for humans. Essentially, getting to work 5 minutes faster is not worth a single life, and that we can engineer fatalities out of our traffic system, that the 40,000 human lives number is not one that we just have to accept. It's an epidemic. If anything else had that kind of rate of fatalities, we'd be pulling it off the shelves, we'd be having recalls, XYZ. So we've got a quick, short video about the principles specifically, and after that we can move on to the adoption and what that means for Laredo, and what we have to do to get that going. Ooh, that was the best part. Let's see.
I'll take the speaker to turn off now.
How do we turn those on? Do we know?
I'm gonna push button.
Right on.
Turn it off.
That's old school, man. I like that.
Ooh.
She's an EIT, that's why.
In the U.S., traffic accidents claim 100 lives per day, along with thousands of serious injuries. If any other industry had a death toll like that, it would be shut down immediately. Countries like Sweden and the Netherlands believe that mobility is a basic human right. No one should have to risk their life to get to work, or to go shopping, or to go out with a friend. This is the premise behind Vision Zero, a family of traffic safety programs in Sweden, Netherlands, and other European countries based on principles of systematic safety. Since 1970, road deaths have been decreasing in the U.S. thanks to things like vehicle improvements and better emergency medicine. But in the Netherlands, fatalities have fallen much more drastically. If our rate had dropped like theirs, we'd be saving 20,000 lives a year. What are they doing that we haven't done? Dutch road safety programs used to be reactive like ours, identifying and fixing black spots where an unusually large number of crashes occurs. But for the last 2 decades, they have instead followed the systematic safety approach. That means not waiting for crashes to occur, but systematically eliminating the opportunities that create high crash and injury risk. Our traffic safety problems stem from 2 inherent human properties. First, we are vulnerable. Our bodies were not made to absorb the force of collisions with motor vehicles. And second, we make mistakes, some inadvertent, some knowingly. If all of us obeyed every traffic law all the time, there would be almost no crashes. But we're human. And a system that is safe only if people don't make mistakes is not a system that is made for humans. Systematic safety recognizes these fundamental human properties and based on them has 5 principles. The first is speed control and separation. There's a maximum safe speed for every type of conflict, for instance, between cars and crossing pedestrians. Roads should be designed either to separate users so that conflicts don't occur, or else to limit traffic speed based on the conflicts that will occur. Where people walk in the street because there are no sidewalks, and at crossings where visibility is compromised and drivers might need to make sudden stops, the target speed is 6 miles per hour. This is accomplished with raised crossings, where people might cross the street anywhere, and where bicycles are in mixed traffic, the target speed is 20 miles per hour, because at higher speeds, the chance of surviving a collision falls rapidly. This target can be met using speed humps, raised intersections, and chicanes. Where drivers are expected to yield at pedestrian crossings, the target speed is 25 miles per hour, because at higher speeds, drivers are reluctant to stop. The 25-mile-an-hour target can be met using narrow lanes, crossing islands that create a chicane effect, and limiting roads to only 1 lane per direction so that cars cannot pass each other. Where traffic meets at a 90-degree angle, the maximum safe speed is 30 miles per hour, based on the capacity of car frames to absorb side collisions. And finally, speed should not exceed 40 miles per hour unless traffic is separated by direction, based on the capacity of cars to absorb head-on collisions. Bicycles can be mixed with other traffic only up to a speed of 20 miles per hour. Beyond that, bikes should be separated. Bike lanes can provide sufficient separation on streets with 1 lane per direction and no parking. But on multiple lane roads, and on roads where speed exceeds 30 miles per hour, and next to parking lanes, bikes should have a separate path. Controlling speed means much more than just posting a speed limit. The road design has to make the target self-enforcing. Engineers around the world know how to design to allow traffic at high speed. The Dutch have also mastered how to design to prevent high speeds. The second principle is functional harmony. Roads can have many functions, such as providing access to homes or shops, hosting a bus route, or carrying through traffic. Functional harmony means that a road should avoid having incompatible functions. For example, a street that provides access to shops will have cars turning in and out and people crossing the street. That is incompatible with the function of carrying through traffic. Based on functionality, cities should have 4 types of roads. Local streets with a target speed of 20 miles per hour, no lane markings, on-street parking, and traffic diversions as necessary to keep away through traffic. Neighborhood principles with a target speed of 25 miles per hour, 1 lane per direction, possible bike lanes, and frequent crosswalks with crossing islands. Urban arterials with a target speed of 30 miles per hour, with signalized crossings and separated bike paths, and without high-intensity commercial activity. And finally, regional flow roads, with wide intersection spacing and little to no access function, with still higher speed limits.
So pop quiz, which one does McPherson fit into?
The last one.
Does it? It says limited access function. McPherson's got a ton of driveways. So which one does McPherson fit into?
Driveways as in commercial?
Tons of access points. So you're constantly having 90-degree intersections on McPherson, right? But it's at 45 miles an hour. So the trick question, McPherson doesn't actually fit into any of those, and that's why McPherson has such a high level of traffic incidents. And so that's kind of what it's getting at.
Third principle of systematic safety is predictability and simplicity. People make fewer mistakes when they know what to expect and when decisions are simple. For example, in Dutch cities, red pavement means a bike lane. Everybody knows that, because all the bike lanes are red. Pedestrian crossings almost always have a crossing island because it's so much simpler and therefore so much safer to check one direction at a time. And for turning left across busy roads, Dutch roads have left turn lanes and turn arrows, which take away the errors that occur when people have to search for a gap in the traffic. The fourth principle of systematic safety is forgivingness and restrictiveness. Forgivingness means making it so that if somebody makes a simple mistake, it won't result in serious injury. Restrictiveness means preventing people from making the mistakes they might want to make. For example, physically separating bike lanes prevents people from parking in them. And limiting roads to one lane per direction makes it impossible to speed when there's a car ahead of you. Systematic safety has a fifth principle too: state awareness. It relates to things outside the realm of road design, such as drunk driving, texting, and inexperienced operators. The mobility that automobiles and roads have brought us has meant enormous gains for human prosperity and freedom. But Vision Zero says that we need not and should not accept an epidemic of road injuries and deaths as the price of progress. European experience shows that roads can be designed to be systematically safe. Now that's something we can live with, and something that every American city should be working toward.
Great. Any questions? Awesome. Well, there's no reason at all that we cannot move towards a future in which our levels of fatalities in Laredo are no longer increasing, but decreasing or completely eliminated. People will say, well, it's Amsterdam, it's Europe, we've got truck traffic, we've got this and that and the other. This has been replicated all over the world. Laredo isn't special. We look like a lot of other cities that have done this successfully. So it is possible for us to do that.
So the focus is on heavily populated streets, or are you talking about
No, it's
neighborhood,
everything, and especially how everything commingles with everything else. So, the second principle is speed control and separation. So it means, tiny neighborhood streets, and it also means the loop, and it also means Del Mar. It means the whole thing.
And your recommendation is to add like bike lanes or to add these raised barriers, speed barriers.
Right. So that gets to the next point, which is adopting it. And what does that mean for us? What does it mean for the city of Laredo? So we spoke to the city manager, and what we need to start off with, and I'll pass out these little handouts so you guys can look over as I talk. What we need to start with is a commitment from the city manager's office and from council. And we got the go-ahead from the city manager to bring this forward to council. And now we need council's approval. This has been brought to them once before. They were interested but didn't really know what the concrete steps were to take to move forward to this kind of a thing. And so that's where we come in, is we spoke to San Antonio, how they got those off the ground. We've done a considerable amount of research, and now we feel comfortable enough to put it back into resolution form and take it to the council chambers and then get it passed. So what does the next 6 months look like? Well, if we can get council to say, yes, you have our blessing, we commit these resources to getting this off the ground. The next thing we do is we plan for a pretty big summit, a Vision Zero summit. And what that looks like is getting folks from TxDOT, from Federal Highway, from this committee, from our staff, from fire, from PD, the whole gamut of people that are stakeholders in our roads and our public spaces. We sit them at a table, and then we look over the data. We talk about some weak spots and blind spots. We talk about, we do a SWOT analysis. And then from that big round table, we create a task force. And we get folks that represent each of those groups to regularly meet and to dissect the data through and through. And so at the end of that, we have a Vision Zero action plan. And what that means is we can use that to refer back to our capital improvements program and maybe come up with better investments that have a higher yield than ones that we've decided upon already. Because we have very limited data consultants in terms of what programs we're deciding to follow and what projects we're investing in. we're kind of doing this blindly. It's almost superstition, where we think we should put our money and our resources towards this, but we don't know if that is gonna be the highest, reward, we don't know if that's the best place to put our money. And something like this is a tool that other cities have been using to go, this intersection, for example, Fremont is a city in California. They found after they went through this process that something like 90% of their traffic fatalities were happening on 10% of their roads. And so then after you see something like that, you totally reconsider your capital improvements program. And you go, this is where the money needs to be. And that's exactly what they did. And they've reduced their traffic fatalities, I think 35-40% in the 10 years that they've been doing
How
this.
far along is San Antonio?
Not very. I think they started about 5-6 years ago. And they had a very, very long stakeholder engagement process. I think that was, a year and some change. So they're still sort of in the early phases.
Well, that was my concern too, is like you're saying, if you're saying that the whole city of Laredo needs to implement,
Right.
but like you said, after your study, it's gonna be focused just on several
Right.
several major thoroughfares that like the Bartlett,
Right.
we've seen a decrease in accidents based on the changing of the direction of that one. So
Right.
that's my concern. But another thing, do you have a dollar amount that they would, that the council could say, hey, well,
Right.
you want this? How much would it cost the city
Right.
to implement something like this?
Right. So at the front end, the summit, getting these folks together, I mean, it's money that we're already spending in terms of salaries, right? And me coordinating this, it's essentially the council going, hey, we pay you a salary, we're okay if you start using your time towards making this summit happen. And then obviously all the folks are already being paid.
Well,
when
but
they
I'm
sit down.
talking about the improvements.
The actual improvements?
The actual
Well,
improvements.
Right, and we won't know until we got that plan. So I think Fremont's, for example, was about 40 pages of these are the things we need to focus on. And that's gonna be different for everybody. So until we do that work, and we get all the stakeholders together and we look over that data, it's impossible to say. But when we do get to that point, for example, I was talking to Mr. Pena today about how TxDOT had given us, more than $1 million to look at access management on McPherson. As you can tell, having so many access points on a 45-mile-per-hour road is a recipe for disaster, and we see that in our data already. But it was such a politically hard issue to push for that it totally dissolved, and we actually had to give that money back. And it was a great source of embarrassment for us, for TxDOT. And ever since then, they've been looking at every application we give them with even more scrutiny, because they're always afraid that that's going to happen. With something like Vision Zero, let's say we revisit the same thing, access management. Now it's not just, well, we can make traffic go more efficiently, it's we're saving lives. This is a moral imperative. And absent, that's always been absent in the political discourse before, so it's a much more difficult thing to swallow. But you give politicians what they need to talk to their constituents to go, hey, this is something that is a moral, ethical issue. It's not just a traffic engineering issue. And that's a totally different degree of plausibility.
But excluding the necessary prioritization of human life,
Right.
there's a financial case to be made as
Yes,
well,
right.
because things like all of the expenses that come from the accidents, not just the loss of life, but all of the other expenses that are eliminated, and
Absolutely.
probably expenses to the city.
Right?
Unpaid medical bills, those kinds of
Oh yeah.
that-
Our science guy, every week he comes to my office and he wrings his hands and he goes, some 17-year-old slammed into one of our traffic lights, they weren't insured, and now we gotta dig deep into our pockets to pay for that. And so you're exactly correct. Happens all the time. Happens all the time. So, if no other questions, we just wanted to let you know this is something that's in the works.
I'd just like to say that things like this excite me. I'm a big fan of roundabouts and just all the creative things that can be done. And I think it's very encouraging that William was talking about doing something like this. So, what's needed from the committee as far as in the way of support?
I think you're just giving it to us. We'll convey that support as we go before city council, 21st, 23rd. We've got one meeting in January, so this will be in the form of resolution. typically the resolutions are sort of lumped in together, so they don't really stop on a lot of these, so it may go as easy as all approving moving forward. But if it were up to us, we'd like to, you know, say a couple words about this before they approve. We don't see any issues necessarily moving forward because they supported this sort of idea already. So we just need to put in a form of a resolution, get it before the city council with the recommendation which we'll affix to the resolution document in the background, saying, you know, brought before the committee and committee.
And right now it's all about getting to the summit, right? That's
Right.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
So, and when that time comes, obviously, all of you are very necessary components to this, so would love to have you there with all the other folks that we bring to the table.
Yeah, that's it. But you're absolutely right, it's something that the city needs in its attempt to grow,
Right.
and, good job.
You got a question? Looks like you maybe had.
No,
Let's try that there.
I'm trying to
Patient.
separate trucks and cars.
Uh-huh.
It's not gonna be easy.
Yeah, and you know, there are ways to commingle them safely, but we gotta do that work to
Well,
find out
the
how.
way the city's designed,
Right.
and then the way the city's growing,
Right,
it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
And you can just start thinking about Loop 20, Mines Road, there's housing,
right,
there's the bridge, there's Columbia.
that's right.
Obviously, you can.
I know we need to go through it, I'm sorry,
No.
but, you know, I like it.
Yeah,
The thing is that,
for non-commercial. You can
well,
see it.
Yeah.
we need to have, and everybody that's going to participate is gonna have to have a very open mind and, you know, a lot of us, or most of us, don't know enough about this to make decisions, so, you know, we'll be learning.
Mhm.
But at the same time, you know, we need to apply ideas to how
right.
we can work this out.
That's
I mean,
right.
it's not a bad idea, but,
Oh, yeah, I mean, it'll be hard.
it's tough.
Yeah.
Does it have to be all of Laredo? Like you said, maybe we could not include those high traffic commercial
Mhm.
areas and focus on the smaller streets, you know, at least get started.
We can certainly, but knowing Laredo, I think, you know, everybody wants to be involved typically, and so I think, especially when we did the comprehensive plan process, it was such a thing that everybody wanted a little piece of, that I can't foresee us being able to exclude anybody without incurring some pretty big costs. Not only to, you know, the social costs, but also, you know, they might know something that we might not, so.
I can just say too, we probably can all assume this, but the applications on the different types of roadways would call for certain things differently. Right, so we would see, and you saw it with the different ranges of speed, which would call for different improvements, and there's other items or issues that you would bring up as well. But again, speed and volumes will determine a lot of what types of improvements will go. So you take it kind of, you know, road by road, speed, volume, topography kind of idea, and you do the application for each one of those roadways.
Right.
So you may have a cookie cutter type approach during development going
Right.
forward,
Right.
that you could lay out, and hopefully in the planning phase, that'll be baked in the cake from that point forward. But we're dealing with two monsters where we have one going forward and we have one with present issues that are on the ground today. So when even McPherson, we're retrofitting to some degree, we are. Or the attempt would be, and maybe McPherson is a bad example, but as he brought it up, you know, that's the case that we would have, because that'll be one challenge of retrofitting, one going forward and planning ahead with the development community, because that's a whole other discussion in getting the development community to say from this point forward, commercially, we're gonna do this, you know, industrially, we're gonna do this, residentially, we're gonna do this, whatever this is, I don't know what that is. But I think that's where we wanna go holistically with all parties involved. Cause you're gonna take a whole different approach in industrial parks than you are residential for, you know, obvious reasons. or Mines Road or Route 20 as compared to, Galveston Street or Market, Street. But so the different applications with the different roadways, different speed will call for different things.
But you're right, you make a very good point about retrofitting, because the majority of the streets aren't prepared for something like this. Just thinking, it was the Guadalupe Street, there's no sidewalks. I mean, I was there the other day, and that place was bombing, there was traffic,
It's crazy.
crazy.
So it needs to
It's
slow
crazy.
down traffic.
How about Target? Target traffic, I don't know, but,
See, but that's part of that great discussion,
Yeah.
because that's the yin and the push and the pull, right? So it's huge volumes on Guadalupe. Guadalupe is actually a state highway, right? That's what
Is
it's
it?
blessed with, yeah. So, you've got that different classification, even though it cuts through, some pretty thick neighborhoods. But that's what you have, is you have access issues between one roadway system and another, cutting through the middle of a bunch of neighborhoods. And so the answer is, do we get more people through there faster? Do we slow them down? Or how do we adjust them, right? What's the reroute, right, around
We don't
neighborhoods?
know until we run the data. And
Right.
that's all this is. And we don't know exactly what comes out at the end. We just know that we need to go through it,
Is there a, based on what we saw from Europe and other cities
Right.
in the United States, is there like a guide?
Yeah, I mean, you just saw 5 essential principles right there, which is,
The only thing I didn't see there, trucks.
right,
yeah, I was gonna say, they were
Yeah,
like
That's,
the
that's,
residential,
that's
commercial,
uniquely, that's,
right,
if you wanna see it as a problem, but, to us it's a
Characteristic,
blessing,
right,
for
yeah.
Laredo.
right,
But, it's hard because you have industrial parks all over the city.
that's right.
And,
Well, and so, we talk about this all the time, but that was largely a planning issue, putting, high, density residential or tons of neighborhoods around industrial parks and getting kids to school in between, 16-wheelers was over, or 18-wheelers, was never a good idea to begin with. And so, what we can do moving forward is say, hey, while we try to make this better, let's make a commitment to not do this again. And even that can come out of a process like this. So you're right, I mean, it's a tough problem, but at the very least, we can look forward and make sure we don't repeat our mistakes. So,
And do you know if the Dutch or the Swiss, did they focus on their existing streets
Mhm.
first, or did they focus on new construction? I mean, because the Dutch and the Swiss have been around
right,
for a while.
right. And that's the problem between a place like the United States and a place like Europe, is Europe largely predated the car. America grew up with the car, and so we've got completely different infrastructures. So that problem is uniquely American. But what we can do is maybe we can't look to Amsterdam as a perfect one-to-one, but we can look at other places in the US as a good one-to-one. And I think it's gonna be a combination of both. The new infrastructure and trying to do the best with what we got already.
With the existing,
So,
good stuff.
all right, thank you very much.
thank you. Okay, item number 2, City of Laredo was approached by Lime and e-bike and e-scooter sharing company regarding their interest to bring their services to Laredo. Any
They were
comment?
shared, yeah, so we've been approached by representatives of Lime, who are a electric scooter. Well, they're multifaceted now, right? So they've done ride sharing, bicycle sharing programs, and now they've gotten into the scooter business pretty heavily. They're wanting to come to or discuss the possibilities with the city of Laredo. A small group of us met with Councilmember Nelly Bielma with those representatives. So they want to see about establishing services here within the city, and it's very selective. So before we start thinking that we're going to see scooters all over the place, the business model doesn't lend itself to that. So you have these scooters that you now see in a lot of cities now, San Antonio being prevalent there. You see them in the downtown areas and other places. But pretty much, a scooter that, is shared throughout. As you swipe your card, you unlock it, you use it, you park it in an allowable space. It stops charging your card. The next person that would like to use it swipes their card, and continues on. So they have a fee-based model. There's a couple different areas or locations where we think it might be successful, which is downtown, maybe Laredo College, maybe TAMU. Obviously from one side of these campuses or in between to another, downtown areas as well. So in saying all that, they are in, again, most of these communities, the Houston, the Dallases, the San Antonios, and they're wanting to come and look to us to do that. So legal right now has, I think, almost completed a document allowing for these services, because I should have probably started with that. We actually have an ordinance against the use of motorized vehicles on sidewalks. So we'd have to bring that ordinance and remove that ordinance to allow for that to happen. And then what we would do is we would have a system, a program set up to allow for these companies to come in. I kind of explain it kind of like how we have our taxi systems. We have a finite number of taxi permits we manage. All of the taxi systems, there's a lot of different companies out there, but we monitor them, make sure that they're providing good service. We inspect, annually, we receive complaints, we review, what they're charging, making sure it's fair, all that good stuff. So it's kind of in the same light, but then you would take it as a scooter company. I know there's discussions as to if there should be a limited number of companies to come in to make it feasible to be here. Our legal department seems to believe that we can't not allow others to not want to compete in the business, so that they have to work that decision out themselves. But essentially what's going to happen is, again, in the January meeting, this is going to be brought before the city council to be able to allow for this to happen, and not to direct staff to necessarily engage single-handedly with one, but first allow the door to open and then to see how these businesses would come in. The way that they would function downtown or on the street, I'll allow, again, Alec to provide some detail as to some of the allowances that can happen, but we essentially would have that same system where we'd have an annual fee, flat annual fee, something nominal like $200, $300, $400. San Antonio has a $500 annual fee, I think, and then it's a per unit cost annually. So I think what we've proposed and they agreed to is like $10 a scooter. Again, just knowing the size of our community, I don't see thousands of these things out there because it costs money for each unit to be out there. So as a business person, you're not going to put more than the business will, be able to generate money from. So they'd be able to ramp up, ramp down as per uses. And one of the key features of all this, for at least the city side as well, and it's been a piece that San Antonio got, was the data. So the city of San Antonio required that these companies provide, all of them, not just Line, but every one of these companies that wants to engage with the city of San Antonio, that they must provide their non-descriptive, personalized data to the traffic department to be able to plug in and make then capital improvements down the road by knowing you have a huge volume of users from this point to this point, or in this route to this route, or from these times to these times. So you're able to make better decisions because now you know ridership as it's coming up and how it's being used. So that's a huge value for the city, right? So we get that data as part of any deal or any sort of permit that we would provide. I guess the initial challenges that we would have, it's just a learning curve that we would have, I think. Within users, within, property owners, drivers of vehicles, pedestrians, and how to use these shared facilities. So, you wanna give any specifics or other detail as to how they would be, how you would see them downtown, and anything I missed, Alec?
Well, before you do, let me ask you, are you planning to attack the ordinance change before it?
It comes
Yes,
at
or-
the same time. So on the same meeting, you remove the ordinance, and then
Is it that easy, just to,
Yes.
okay, we scratch it off?
it's one meeting, gets rid of an ordinance. Yeah.
Jeez, that's all, I mean, I was on an ordinance, on one of those, and it took months to
Well, to introduce,
gather the, to gather the data, to
This
write it,
interests the
and then
city.
it just,
well,
oh, is that what it is?
Your
Is that the
ordinance
difference?
didn't interest
Well-
the city.
Apparently not. Apparently not,
Not for-
wow, you could just scratch it like that?
for the record,
That's
an ordinance will require two public readings, right? So you're gonna have to go through two meetings. The removal of an ordinance takes one whole meeting,
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah, obviously.
But to introduce it, it takes a minimum
Quite a
of
bit,
2
yeah,
years.
I remember.
Why would you need to approach that ordinance if scooters and bikes will move on regular streets? I mean, they're painting bike lanes all over the place.
Right,
Well, there's a
I don't
difference.
understand that why they would need to remove that ordinance in order for this company to come in.
they would allow them on the sidewalks as well. So that's the difference. And let me tell you, the ordinance is actually because of an issue that rose many years ago with motorized vehicles. There was some bad accidents and then some fatalities actually here within the city. So that was quickly addressed through an ordinance saying no motorized vehicles.
Would it
No.
be better just to give the scooters an exclusion, or an inclusion? Just allow the scooters but no other, cause don't you suddenly allow for motorcycles now to ride on the sidewalk if you?
Okay, so the way that the ordinance is written is that it is a non-motored vehicle. So it would have to be without
It specifies the weights and the CCs and, you
Right.
know, I think it at some point even describes the size of the engine, so.
but it has to be electric too. That's
Right.
specifically stated where it can't be combustible engines.
So hopefully
Yeah.
that sieve is tight enough, so.
Right, and I think they've gone through, and again, we're not trying to reinvent anything. We're grabbing Houston's and San Antonio's and Austin's and kind of mostly San Antonio's and kind of watering it down to what we need for, we're not watering down, but making more specific to our needs down here. And, but using the same language, same protections, that they're using successfully. Now again, will this business model work? That's for them to decide, right? That's, we didn't get into the Ubers and the Lyft business. We were going to, the city council wanted us to. And I was asked, well and told, to lead that. And so as we went down that rabbit hole, it ended up being that it was best programmed without us having a thumb on that scale, without us regulating. And we said, you know what, it's best to stand back, let those TNCs, those type companies, not be regulated at all. So right now, we don't ask for any permits, registrations, anything on Uber and Lyft. So we took that approach, that hands-off approach. This one, we believe we have to regulate just like other cities have, because of some nuance issues, and so we have to have those catch-alls.
And forgive me for asking this question, but didn't, you said about the lift, and
Right.
didn't the city reduce their oversee of taxis? Wasn't there something that
Well,
came up where they said, we're gonna charge you anymore, we're not going to
Right.
regulate, we're not going to
Right.
license
So-
all that?
Right, so in saying that as well, as that happened with Ubers and Lyfts, the taxis came out and said, well, we want the same, we'd like to be then unregulated as well. If you're not gonna regulate, we're not gonna regulate. Then, so they asked the council, that council obliged, 1 or 2 meetings later, they came back knocking on the door, yelling us to please, please, please put back these regulations in, because there were some catch things that made sure that everybody was playing by the rules. So rules kind of benefit, you know, no, I think they benefit all to where at least you know what, if you're asking people to play by the rule book, what rules we're gonna play by. So then we had to come back, they had to come back, we had to ask them to put back the exact regulations that were in place before, to put them back. And we thought, let's see if we go back any further, and that was the last we heard. So now they're playing with the same rules they had before. So they had asked to be unregulated, and we
I've been at that
did.
meeting where they had, hey, if you're not gonna regulate them, you're not
Mr.
gonna
Murillo
regulate
was,
us.
you see it, and Lupita was head of parking, Mr. Murillo was there, we went through all that, and it was,
No,
at some
I-
point, it was just, you had to sit back and just watch it, because, it was kind of, well, you don't see all of the angles until you just say, you know what, I'm gonna give you exactly what you asked for, and then you realize there's some angles in there, that you say, well, that might have been better if you go ahead and make sure that we have that rule book. So, everybody's back. We're gonna bring it to council, I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of questions again, it's an ordinance, there's gonna be a couple readings. And so there's gonna be plenty of opportunity for not only the council, the general public, constituents, staff to answer questions, moving forward, so we'll put that on there and see where we go with this.
Some other interesting caveats is when we met with their GR person, I said, you know, one of our biggest sort of pedestrian or non-motorized groups is people that go across every day. And if you put, you know, electrified scooters, that's gonna be a tempting ride to go back and forth, and he was like, okay. So, we'll probably be seeing those along the bridge a lot now. I know they already do work in Mexico City. So I don't know what the consequences of that will be, but it'll be interesting to see. The other thing that we talked about at length was about whether or not we wanted to go into an exclusive deal with one company versus multiple, because as he very accurately pointed out, in some other cities, they open up the floodgates and they get oversaturated with all of these, and these scooters are being left, you know, in rivers and on roads and all sorts of crazy stuff. It has been a problem. So one of the ways that we thought would be best to circumvent that is to get into a deal with one company, a pilot program to see how it works. And Lime has been, you know, they're gonna have local staff here that are gonna be on it all the time, people to clean, you know, to immediately go to where one is not supposed to be, pick it up and take it somewhere else. All sorts of things that other companies might not offer, including that exclusive data. And so that's one thing that I don't think the city ever really agreed upon, whether or not we wanted to do in a one-to-one pilot project or just open up the gates. I think as it stands, it's the latter. We're just opening up the gates.
I think it has to, you have to, procurement purposes, you can't.
Well, Lubbock,
It has to be what do they call it, where there's one company has that particular
Sole
service,
source.
sole source, so it's not sole source. How many, do you know how many other companies have this?
no,
There's a
no,
bunch.
yeah.
There's iBird, there's
Right,
Time.
right. There's a few.
Right on.
There's a few.
More
So,
than one.
So it's not gonna be that much of a flood, basically.
well, we hope not.
For the pilot, it's probably a good idea to do it with one,
Right.
and if this company wants to work with the cities,
Right.
great, but, I think it's against city interest to,
To limit it to just.
you know, to
Right.
sign up with only one, because then prices may start going up and you might start thinking other stuff that,
Right. Well, and, you know, the other thing is that, let's say we have enough capacity for 100 scooters throughout the city, but that's just enough to make it lucrative for a company to come down here in the first place. And so then we've got, you know, 4 times the amount that we actually have service for, so then we've made it not lucrative for anybody to do things.
yeah, but private companies have a way to find out very, very quickly
Right.
that if it's not good for one, it's not good for the other, so
Right.
they'll work it out by themselves.
Could be.
One of them might leave, or maybe both
Right.
might leave,
Right,
because, you know, it might not be good business.
right.
You know, but, I've never been for governments, to limit on, or regulate who comes in and, or who wants to do business and who
Sure.
doesn't.
But you support
That's-
the pilot with.
Yes,
Yeah, I
definitely.
think,
That's
is
a
it
given.
fair to ask, could we see a visual of what it looks like, what these things look
Lime
like?
scooter?
I've
Or
never,
Alec riding a lime scooter?
both,
I got both.
but,
Those are on a different folder.
show me what it looks like.
Yeah, the one wants with the lime scooter now, right?
Yeah.
He just finished the bike.
Oh, okay. Now, if you had one of these like with a basket and then have them by the, to go up, just to go up that ramp to that shopping center, I would choose one of those things.
I got a bunch of those in my warehouse.
Do you really?
They're not electric, but I'm sure you can fix them.
That's Pata power.
Pata power.
Pata power.
Oh, that's neat.
I thought we were talking about the other type.
Oh, like the
You know,
Vespa
the
type
bigger,
things?
yeah, like.
Yeah, the
those
sit
type.
But
down
the,
ones.
Like
the
mini
electric
cars?
bikes, I don't know if you want to show them those.
Hey, you
Oh,
should
yeah,
bring,
bikes,
yeah,
they're
one of the
bigger.
little
Yeah,
baskets.
because I was, thinking, people walking across Bridge One, go to the mall, maybe they
Yeah.
don't go or, don't wanna
Lime
use
has their
the
own.
bus or.
And you should, also, if you want to show them a video to see how fast they go.
All these. Well, and that's the other thing as well, where, let me go back to the scooter.
Those scooters.
If, they're able to regulate, or, well, we can require also them to regulate,
Govern the speed.
govern the speed and geofence. And so we can make, let's say, one area or one neighborhood or one roadway a certain mile an hour, and even during a certain amount of time, like during this time, this road can only go up to, 18 miles an hour, and then, and it has to drop
Do
down
they
to
go that
5.
fast, really?
They go pretty, let's see if we got here.
I think they top out at like 55.
Shut up.
Take one. By the way, so that music plays constantly while you're on the scooter. It doesn't sound the same song, but
It's over
it's
now.
very catchy.
Right.
So,
37 miles.
Range, not speed.
But if you notice, he's on the street.
Right.
Is that permitted?
yeah. Anybody's permitted on the street.
Right.
So at this point, really what we're talking about is allowing for these on the sidewalk. But on the street, you've got already, established bike lanes or roadways that we should,
Or would they be permitted to use your bike lane, your bike?
Well, and so the director of the health department, he's actually not supportive of this at all. He's essentially like, you guys are supposed to be about active transportation. This isn't active. To which, yeah, good point. But what it is a catalyst. Because if we get people, maybe they're not going to bike uphill, but they'll definitely get on one of those scooters. And so if we get more people to do that, it's going to be a call for more bike, scooter infrastructure. And so that will make the whole thing better, right? Because we've got infrastructure for everybody. People can stay on the sidewalk, these scooters can get in lanes designated for bikes and scooters, and the cars can have the road, obviously.
And can I ask a silly question? For a heavyset person like I am, would those things be suitable for someone that's
Absolutely.
larger,
Yeah.
anyway.
Anyway.
Because, let's face it, we have healthy citizens and can, one of those things, so we used to, when I went to, I know we're wrong, but I took a vacation with family to Martha's Vineyard, and we rented some scooters, and some of these scooters were, mine was like, I couldn't get that deep.
The battery was low.
Yeah, I think so. But everyone was zooming by, and I'm like trying to catch up. But I'm just saying.
Good save, good save. Yeah,
Okay, well, thank
All
you very
right.
much, guys.
thank you.
So there's nothing under discussion of possible actions. So we'll go to number 7, discussion and possible recommendations of the following. The Delmar speed study setting the new speed limits on the section of Delmar Boulevard between Bartlett Avenue and Bob Bullock Loop within the city limits of Laredo, Webb County. Anything on that?
Yes, thank you. So sure, I'd like to recognize Mr. Rodriguez. He's just, one of our citizens here. He's been very active with us and working on this project, so we appreciate the time he's taken, the active role that he's been involved with. That's kind of the stuff that we'd like to see, and hope more Mr. Rodriguez's are out there. So he pointed out some things on Delmar, some things that we knew, some things that we hadn't seen in a while, and so we took a look and studied the roadway to see the speeds along a portion of the roadway, because there was a smattering of some changes with the speed limits, differences, and so what we wanted to do was, if we could, have a standardized speed limit throughout, so people understood. Again, if we're asking you to play by the rules, we need to show you what rule book to play by. So we want to establish that speed limits within this target area, and also to the school zones where we had established school zones at a 20 mile an hour. We wanted to visit those as well. This we're again also taking to a city council in the form of an ordinance, and we'd like to take this with a recommendation from this committee. But Robert Pena, our engineering superintendent, can chime in as to just the generalities and or specifics if you have any questions as well.
Yeah, so let me bring up the large map here. So we essentially evaluated Delmar Boulevard between Bartlett Avenue and Loop 20, a mile and a third. And we set up 3 locations where we established the data collection. And so what we have here is an inventory of existing signage, speed limit signs specifically. And we're indicating, we also acquired our accident, our crash data. And so as we move down the roadway, we're showing what we have for an 85th percentile speed, which is essentially what we set our speed limits at. And so we have a top speed and a volume of vehicles for that time period. And let me move down the road. So this is Bartlett, and we're going to move east down the roadway. And again, we have our 85th percentile speed in the westbound at 42. A top speed seems to be very high, looks like a 50. And the total number of cars, 100.
Is that correct?
100%. Yeah. So and then
900?
and the eastbound. I've got 2 studies up here.
Yeah.
I've got an older one and a newer one. I think that's what that
Right.
is.
Right.
Okay, so essentially the roadway is 40 mile an hour, 85th percentile. Is what we're going to be recommending. We move down the road. These are some crashes that we have here, which are personal injuries and possible, property damage. But I don't believe we have any fatalities within the 3 years that we evaluated. This is one of the sites where we put down the data collection devices, which were hose counters, and we collected data over 3 days, October 30th to November 1st, and you can see the information in here for both directions, east and west, where the 85th percentile is significantly high, close to 50, and the top speed is significantly higher, 55 plus, and these are the volumes, 11,500. So it's a high volume roadway, and traffic is moving very swiftly. And we're approaching, I've made some notes in here where we're proposing to upgrade the speed limit signs. This is the Winfield Alexander subdivision intersection. We move into the school zone for the Alexander High School, where we're gonna be upgrading the school speed limit as well, where it'll be raised to 25 miles an hour during the school hours. Another data collection point. And the other end of the school limit, another collection point, but in summary, it's essentially 40 miles an hour for that section of road. And that's what we'll be recommending, if you all have any questions.
Mr. Chair, also, if I can, to just, obviously that's the standard, the 85th percentile is the standard of how the speed limits are established, and so that's not outside the norm. I think we all probably have been out there, and there is high volumes. There's a couple CIP capital improvement projects, one specifically for the reserve. We're asking for a signal, which, right, and we saw a couple accidents on those, on the data that we pulled. You've had, as y'all know, if you look south on that Kings Arthur Court, they've developed into multi-family apartment complexes, and there's just multiple after multiple. So there's huge volumes now coming out of Kings Court. Obviously, on the north side is another story, right, from that side, which has been established. But the new volumes that are coming out of Kings Court, trying to come out and especially make a left going west on Delmar, it's almost next to impossible. And so we have already put in for that capital improvement, or put a signal there to make that intersection safer. But again, these are the speeds that we're looking at in the roadways, or the parts of the road, or the portions of the road that we're looking at. And so, working off of what our 85th percentile is, why we're recommending to adjust from a 35 to a 40 and a 20 to a 25 throughout that entire corridor, and not having different changing speed limits throughout.
I'm not following what corridor that is, the 40 mile, from where to where?
That would be
It
from
would go
Bartlett
from Bartlett
to Loop 20. That's right.
It's 40 miles from passing.
Oh, I'm sorry, outside of the,
Dover.
So at around this point, just east of Bartlett is 40 miles an hour. And then it transitions down to 35. Let me get rid of that. Transitions to 35 east of Bartlett, right before,
Kings Corner.
I believe, Whitfield, and
So
yeah.
it's 35 up until that, so from Bartlett to there is
To Loop
35?
20.
No.
You're saying 40 the whole way?
This side.
We're gonna recommend that the entire stretch, or that this study area become 40 miles an hour,
From 35 to 40.
from 35 to 40.
mile an hour to 40, correct.
Could I say something?
That's, yes, sir. As
It's-
well, the chair.
There's also a 30 mile per hour area
Yeah,
between
yeah.
Alexander and Loop 20.
Right.
Here it is.
And the reason I brought the issue up is because there's 30s, 35s, 40s, obviously the school zones, and it causes confusion for drivers. I ended up having some skin in the game at $200 for a deferred adjudication on the ticket, with the understanding that I would try to bring this to you guys for standardization to maybe a 40 for the entire length of Delmar. This is Bartlett to Loop. Hopefully we can make that from Bartlett all the way to 35 as well.
Could you explain as to why you only had 11,000 some, before you got to Alexander, you had 16,000 that way? Is there a reason why there's a $5,000 difference in traffic?
Going eastbound or westbound?
Well, if you
Eastbound.
notice, I mean, you did it real quick, but,
Right.
I think your study showed
11,000 and it's the
11,000
other
and
greater
then 16,000.
From the subdivisions that
subdivisions that come out.
Has to be
And
Winfield.
go that way.
Winfield and
Right,
all
so
that.
Alexander comes out dump center and
Hey.
so does Winfield dump it, yes.
Are there any plans, now that you guys are going to propose 40 miles, are there any plans to expand to a 2-lane, like from Alexander towards the loop? Because that becomes a 1-lane.
As soon as we have right of way, that would be a discussion point. I know right now, even the school district, from what I understand, is looking to acquire or then donate the property owners up to Loop 20, so that Alexander would have all that property.
All the way up to the loop?
But not necessarily for construction, from what we understand. They're just asking the property owner to donate to school, so that the school can make any adjustments, which may be, let's say, a right turn lane. Because that, you could have that as well, because you might use that as a through lane and one long queuing right turn lane.
But, well, whether they get the land or they don't, you know, we need to, I think that as a city, we need to stop doing stuff like that, because we're gonna end up with the same problem we had on Del Mar, right past the pool, where it's 2-lane, becomes a 1, and then it opens up into a 2. And we're gonna have the same problem right there, and with that school growing, in a few years, it's gonna be impossible to move through there,
So-
especially going towards the loop.
So we
Because
could,
there's a 2-lane coming east, I'm sorry,
yes, sir.
and there's a 1-lane going west.
Agreed to, and past that, so we're big proponents of that, right? So we're singing the same song with you. Especially because too, once you cross Route 20, you've got other schools on that side. So you've got people actually going to those schools using Del Mar. So not only do you have all the Alexander stuff that's happening, people are traveling over there so I can cross Route 20 to get over, so we even needed more now. So, Councilmember Bielma is very well aware, she's working with management, with the private property owners to see how that would be worked out. That, from our part, we are entirely supportive, we'll do what we'll make as much noise as we can. We recommend that if that's something you would wanna make noise about, we would recommend it as well. Cause from a traffic standpoint, we entirely agree, as well, where there's a bottleneck that does back up and get very dangerous for kids who are being dropped off or crossing Del Mar, running across the street because everything is stacking, behind.
Plus, it's gonna keep growing, and we're gonna need that middle lane in order to turn.
Make left turns.
That seems to me, I would agree with Felix that seems to be more the challenge in this area than the speed. Because really the speed discussion's about moving more volume, right? That's what this is about, it's not, and 40 seems, with so much going on in there, it seems fast to me.
It
I
is.
mean, I get the 85 percentile
Yes,
for
sir.
study, but that just seems too fast.
For the record, just as your friendly neighborhood bike pedestrian coordinator, I do not recommend widening or increasing speeds. Research and data show that as soon as you widen the road, immediately it goes back to its full capacity in the span of sometimes months. So it's not a very good investment. I understand this one's a little bit different, but the principle's still there. So
You gotta get your vision zero
That's right.
pass first.
that's right. You gotta.
Well, and we don't necessarily disagree with that either, and we don't wanna speak out of both sides of our mouth, but
Yeah.
But what we do wanna do also is respond, when we do have that challenge of having different speed limits. So on the driver themselves, it's kinda tough also to be aware of all these changes, right, one. And so, responding to that, we went out there and conducted the study and found the 85th percentile. Now, At this point, does that mean that we're required to go to the 85th? No, it does not. But it does show at this point that that's where it should be.
Yeah, you saw that some of the areas, you had over 45, you had like 50, 55,
There
so.
was a 60 and a 70.
Right,
every
and,
fall.
and it doesn't mean that we're gonna set at 60 or 70, so,
Right.
well, we said, you know what, we have to look into areas where you had situations where you have a lot of driveways, where you have a lot of people going in and out. So we take all that into consideration, so under that, you can say, you know what, I'm not gonna go 60, I'm gonna go lower, I'm gonna go lower. So based on that, we said, let's keep it at 40, I mean, we could've gone, some areas could've been 45. Actually, I think in some areas, based on the 85%, about knowing all the activity, the driveways, we understand that, so we said, no, let's keep it at 40. Ultimately, it's, the speed limit is to be set based on speed, right, on the 85% of speed. What could happen, somebody could challenge and, you know, you get a citation for going 40 and you set the speed limit at 30, you say, you know, look, speeds are not 30, you know, that's incorrect, you're setting the speed limit at the incorrect speeds. So we kind of have to follow this, the 85 percentile is normally
Is
typically
it documented?
the engineering, you know, that to set the speed limits, and then you go plus or minus, normally minus if there's situations, accidents, or there's driveway. So for us to go and set up a speed limit not lower than, a lot lower than that, is, first of all, it's not gonna be respected, second, it could be challenged, and third, we're not doing it the right way we're supposed to do it.
And it's
So that's
not
why.
being respected right now.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
I travel that road
That's what I'm saying.
every day.
And
I
if you
go
lower-
in
yeah.
to the house and
If you
from
lower,
down.
even lower, it's gotta get respect, that's why you go
No
out
one's
there, you
doing
do.
40.
Yeah, and that's why we go, that's why we did that, for 85 percentile speed is 40 something, some areas say 50s. So we said, just keep it at 40. Some people are gonna go faster, some people are gonna go slower, but that's what it's all for. At least we set the speed limits based on the studies, on the
Yes,
data.
it's really.
on the data, yes, data.
Just to put it in perspective, when you get off the loop, you're coming off the loop at 60. As soon as you turn onto Delmar going west, it's a 30. It's almost impossible to mentally adjust from a 60 to a 30. And consequently, it is a speed trap. You'll find a lot of citations are being issued there. I had one, obviously, Councilwoman Vilma had the same situation. So with a constant changing of speed speed limit from 30, 35, 40, plus the school zones, it's problematic, and it needs to be standardized for just common courtesy to the citizens.
Mr. Eads, I'm not sure they have a say on the raising the 20 to 25. Does UISD have to be contacted, or they have no say in that?
This is a traffic management issue. I
That's a
mean,
traffic management issue. Normally, when you have a speed limit up to 40, you can increase it based on the
Usually
40,
15 miles
50 miles under
below
the speed
posted
limit, right.
I see.
You can go under 50 miles, the speed limit, since we're going 40, that's why we're doing 25. We
So-
go for the same situation.
So are you gonna raise the speed limit on Alexander to 25 or recommended? And going
Correct
east,
everything else.
are you gonna leave it at 20?
No, it's gonna be
no,
40.
sir, any school district in that area, which would be the Alexander, would be 25.
No, but I'm talking about from McPherson
West.
going
west.
west, I'm sorry.
McPherson
We
will-
have
east.
United, we have,
that's not part
That's
of
not
this.
part of
at
the study.
this
That we're
point.
just going McPherson east.
oh,
And,
okay.
and the reason too,
We
just
may have
to,
to go back and study that side, there's a lot of schools, there's a lot more houses.
Yeah,
Schools are narrower,
Schools and.
there's
Yeah,
narrower.
okay, yeah, yeah.
and to answer that question, I think to Mr. Rodriguez, and I wanted to kind of, I'm glad we touched on it, because that has some spacing differences, a lot
Absolutely.
different than over
Yeah.
here, so
The width.
we would love to, again, go back and have that study too, and we might find that it may be the same, it may be lower, just because of it being more narrow. And again, you know, it sounds counterproductive, but you also what low speeds help do, but also you have to weigh that with the challenge of getting people safely from one point to the next, safely. And then using standards, right? So this is a standard being used. You know, it's a state standard, and Mr. Murillo's, you know, correct, and we'll reiterate again, even to be challenged to say, show me, you know, your study where I shouldn't be, you know, able to drive, you know, 40 mile an hour when everybody in front of me was driving, you know, 53 on average. And
What
so,
is the speed limit, from McPherson to,
Orland,
Bartlett?
40.
40.
Was it 40? Well, it makes
Let me
sense,
give you a bit
it
of
makes
his-
sense to make it all 40.
Let me give you
with the
history,
exception of-
it used to be 35 and we went in there and did that section of 40, but we had to stop there in the area of the yard or somewhere, I don't remember, and then,
Yeah.
because it was not wide enough, so we kept it at 35, that's why you have all this. Then we widened now, now we have a wide 5-lane road all the way to past Alexander, so that's why, so now let's make it all, the same. But that was the issue, because the street was narrow, we didn't wanna go 40 in a 1-lane road, cause you had to merge, and there was no turning lane, and there was other issues, so.
Now, the speed limit in front of Alexander is by time, right, during the
Yes.
day?
yes, sir.
Yeah,
Because you have a commercial, area right across from Alexander, would that
There you
affect
go.
them? I mean,
During school hours,
well, I'm just saying.
if you're in the school zone, then yes, sir, you would have to respect those.
Yeah.
But then that gives you more time to kinda, smell the bread being cooked.
See what restaurant to choose.
yeah.
So what do you need from us? Do you need for us
Recommendation.
to,
Recommendation.
can I have someone, does everyone agree with this? If so, can I have someone, recommend that we send it to council as a recommendation to move everything, east of Bartlett Street to Loop 20, making it, 40 and 25 for the school zone?
I motion to
Thank you.
recommend it.
Second, anyone?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I'm opposed.
You opposed? We have one opposed. Okay, so the ayes have it. Okay, I think that's it, so can we adjourn, or?
So, yeah, if I can mention one last thing.
Yes, sir.
I think for all intents and purposes, this will probably be a couple of our staff members' last Transportation Safety Committee meeting.
Ooh, who are we losing?
Mr. Roberto Murillo will be retiring and
Congratulations.
going off and playing a lot of golf. No? Not golf? No?
Oh, is that permitted?
I don't know if I play golf, but yeah, I will, I'll try.
And we have another employee with us, in fact, joining us tonight as well. Mr. Manuel Benavides will be retiring January 11th as well.
No.
Congratulations, Mr. Thank you. Congratulations.
Well-deserved retirements. There's not any way we can repay
How
for
long
all
have
the
your
years.
your respective services been?
I'm sorry?
How
How
long
long
have you been?
31 years.
31 years.
Almost 29, 28 and a half, 28 and a quarter. Not enough, I'm not enough. Hacer nada.
So, want to mention it, and so they're both great individuals. They've been very good to the city. I think they've given a lot, and so we thank them. I know, thank them, the staff thanks them. So, thank you all very much.
We'll be getting a lot of
We'll be calling, right, Manuel? We'll be calling, complaining.
Here's our number.
301. Can I give a 301 call?
Yeah, they know who to call. Okay, that's it. Call this meeting adjourned.